Welcome to the Play Free podcast. This is a project I've been working on for the past month or so, and it's not only turned into a podcast, but a vidcast. The first half of these episodes are about getting perspective from the professional player by watching their video, getting some insight to their thinking processes, how they make decisions, why they make decisions, and we relate that again a lot to the technical and tactical aspects. The back half of this episode is focused on a one-on-one interview that asks a variety of questions related to their pro basketball journey. So I hope you guys enjoy. The best way to support our channel is just to like, subscribe, engage with our content. And if you have any specific questions or any guests that you'd like to see on the show, just feel free to comment and we can keep a running dialogue and just continue to build this thing and make it better and better as we go. I appreciate all your love, all your support. And if you want to reach out to me, the best way to do that is through my email, support@playfreeball.com.
So here, anytime I run a pick and roll, like the first priority is, can I reject the screen? And I say that because it compromises any coverage pretty much if you can reject the screen. So right here, I'm just looking at my defender. They're kind of not really, they're trying to ice it, but the big's already out of place. Just getting downhill, foul. Like, I feel like that's a pretty good play, and you'll take that, 5 days, 7 days out of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, we got
The one thing I noticed, maybe you could comment on it. I feel one of your great strengths as a player is just how comfortable you are initiating contact. Like you seem very, very strong. Like people don't really push you around or move you. So when you get downhill, that's something I'm assuming that you're looking to do. You're looking to initiate contact when the angle is there, and then play into your strength of just being so comfortable with that. Is there truth to that? Like, do you feel like that's accurate?
100%. Part of it is because creating contact, I feel, and my theory is if there's going to be contact, you create contact first. It gives you that sort of that front foot mentality, and also you can create angles as you're sort of probing any situation. So, defender's on your hip, he may be chasing over the screen. Now, if you can put him in jail, you start to open up so many more reads and options, as you control your space, as opposed to if you kind of come off the screen, he chases over, and there's freedom of movement for the defender. Now he can sort of maybe beat you to a spot or reattach. So yeah, for sure, definitely being physical and pick and roll is definitely something I always think about when running those actions.
How did you develop that? Like, was that when you were a young kid, you were always kind of initiating contact, or maybe you were in martial arts or something? Like, it just seems like you're really, really comfortable with contact.
It's a long process. I was never a pick and roll player by any means as a youth player. And so developing that was pretty much something that I had to actively work on. And there's a lot of simple things you can sort of do. Like one of my favorite ones that is I think Basketball Immersion, maybe are the originators of this, but kind of like and this is just a straight line drive drill. Like you have a defender on your hip, so the offensive player already has a straight line drive. Now, when the offensive player moves and the defense can move, and trying to find an angle to finish at the rim. And I feel like that simple drill there, being able to like keep your advantage and control the space through contact, that could help someone very quickly. And then from there, you can kind of maybe advance it a little bit more and then throw in a pick and roll and add constraints to the drill. But yeah, I feel like that really helped my game, is like finishing and driving with someone on your hip, because then you can really get a feel of like how much you can, you know, leverage your physicality.
Mm. Right on, brother. I love it.
Yeah, so let's see this. So we got a punch screen happening here. Using it. Right, so let's run that back. So there are the drops. Let's go run it back. And the thing about this action is like personnel is a big thing. So obviously myself, pick and roll player, the guy coming into the screen is Rob Lowe, phenomenal shooting big. So having a shooting big versus drops is really going to help floor spacing. Now we could talk about other bits and pieces, like number 5 could probably shift a little bit more into like towards the 45, and 15 could be more into the corner to optimize the floor spacing, but we still get it done anyway. Or he gets to the corner eventually. The big's in a drop here, number 34. So I'm just saying, like, is Rob going to roll? So right now at this point, I'm checking my rear view mirror, so to speak, and I know he's popping, and I know the defender's coming with me. And so now I just go into a spin, because I know it's easier to get the pass there. And from there, it's just simple basketball.
Mm-hmm. Outside of personnel, like knowing who you are, knowing who your teammates are, knowing who you're playing against, what other things are you looking for even before you receive the pick and roll?
Before pick and roll is like, I'm always thinking spacing. Spacing is so important in pick and roll, because if you run pick and rolls, like, let's just rewind to the last clip, excuse me. So let's just say, it's not the last clip, just get through that one. So let's just say, I think it's number 20 in the strong side corner. If he was kind of like maybe above the break, I wouldn't run this pick and roll, or I would at least wave him down. And because if we ran this pick and roll and he was standing sort of where the coach is standing, on the
Dion, sorry
45.
to interrupt. Just for everybody that's on the same page that may not know, when you say above the break, what does that mean?
So above the break is kind of like where, so if you started on the baseline and where the 3-point line is, and it's the point where like the straight line starts to curve. So if I say above the break, that's where it kind of breaks off into like the, I guess, curved 3-point line. So kind of like not quite the 45, and like ushering your way down towards the baseline, but not dead corner. So yeah, if we were running this pick and roll and we shifted number 20 to where the 3-point line breaks, now the spacing would be compressed, and I wouldn't have all this like real estate here to sort of explore. So anytime I run pick and roll, I'm always like observing, like, do we have the right spacing in order for me to maximize the pick and roll? Because sometimes you'd run into like just the defensive help, and then you don't really get to, attack the pick and roll in the optimal way you'd want to.
I noticed that too with a few of the other clips, and it may come up pushing guys through or directing traffic before the
and
happens.
absolutely. And the way we played with the New Zealand national team, like, we always made it a point. It was like, make sure, say we got an O board and there's 14 seconds to run another on ball. There's like, we always sort of drive this concept of like play known spacings. And by known spacings, obviously there's so many different spacings you could play: middle pick and roll, shake pick and roll, wing pick and roll, step up pick and roll. So we always try to get to a spacing that we all know, everyone hold their spacing, and then we run the on ball. We rarely ever just like we're sort of playing super fast and just kind of not really thinking about what pick and roll spacing we're playing. So yeah, we really drove that home with the national team, and then especially in this game. So let's dive into this next one. Right here. So right now it looks like we're just running middle on ball. Yeah, and then going into a reject. Smoke the layup though, which isn't ideal. So I go back. Excuse me. So this one, little on ball. Now he goes under on this, and obviously you could probably maybe shoot the three, but there's still a lot of time left on the shot clock. And the big's trying to get back. So I could hit number 14 here, but I'm already seeing this little window right here where I can sort of like, if Rob was to come into the ball screen, we would call it like a bingo, where you would like beat the screen or beat your defender before the screen. So that's what I'm thinking right here is I see a gap, and obviously creating that contact. This is kind of going back to what we spoke about before. If this was just from this point, if the defender guarding me was on my hip, and we played that sort of shoulder to chest advantage game, this is basically that right there. All right, trying to keep your angle and get a layup. So yeah, just really simple actions, but with a lot of intent.
Yeah, I was going to tell you the one thing I really loved about that clip was the change of pace that happened. Like you came off it with, I think it was a zipper cut, right? It was a zipper cut off, and then
Yeah.
and then you, or no, that was just a, what would you
Well,
call
it's
it?
kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a zipper action sort of, and then from here, like exploring, and then just having your weight going forward, like right here, like being in this position too, like having a split stance, sort of chest down, like as soon as you want to accelerate, like you can accelerate right here, like you're in a nice body position. Maybe it's offensive foul, but you know,
It's the levels though. Like you're able to play kind of high and narrow as you turn the corner, and then drop on the between the legs.
Absolutely.
When you turn the
Absolutely.
corner and you got hip to hip, is this a situation? And maybe this is too specific, but would you be trying to use the window more often than not? I guess based on the angle that you have, like it's pretty tough because your pickup is a few feet, 5 feet away from the front of the rim. So now you're stretching out. So I'm not saying it's an easy finish, but would you say you're trying to use the window and stretch out, or is that not something that you're not thinking about really?
In this case, I don't think I'm really thinking about it. All I'm thinking about is like, can I keep this advantage that I have, and who can help? And knowing like the spacing's a little bit compressed here, like ideally 22 would be dead corner. The guy under the basket, he could maybe wheel, but I think if he just holds his dunker, it kind of keeps the big who's guarding him at bay. So it's like, who can help? And really, no one can help. The only thing that kind of kills the play is just not being able to execute the shot. So yeah, I'm always thinking like, can I keep my advantage, and who can help? Because then from there, you know where the rotations are coming from, and then you've got kickouts, which is like ideal basketball in my mind.
That's perfect, dude. That's really good.
So here we've got shape pick and roll spacing, but we haven't quite got to the corner, and it's just lazy coverage. So and this is, and even as a team who we try to drive home that message. So ideal spacing, guy who's trailing the play, I think it's number 2, would be, we could shift him all the way to the slot, and then number 22 is kind of jogging through. He would be dead corner, and that would give us the optimal spacing. But like here, I can see the guards trying to go under, and I know that the big that was guarding on balls, number 34, we knew he was going to be in drops coverage most of the night just because that's the best for him. And so right now I'm thinking, okay, defender's going under. I don't want to shoot the three. So can I beat the under? So basically the concept of like, if he's going under, can I just be quicker than him and get downhill? And I've got the advantage already. You know, take a veer step into the big and then just easy basketball. So I always think if you're playing against an under and you're not a great three-point shooter, can you just turn the gas on and beat your defender downhill? And especially out of shake, pick and roll. So if we were to rewind that back and just hypothetically speaking here, now as a defender, if we had to shift the pick to the wing, now, and so your first dribble would be going towards like east to west, it would be more advantageous to the defender to go under because of the angle of the screen. I don't know if that makes sense. So if I'm the defender and I was like on the wing when we were running a pick and roll and you could steal the under, you could still beat me to the spot. But like this one, you're kind of not really able to get there in time. And so it's almost like death going under on a shake pick and roll.
What's your favorite coverage to play against generally? I know there's different spacings. Drops, yeah.
Drops coverage. There's times where I look fast, but I'm actually really, like, comparatively to like a lot of good players at the top level, I'm really slow. So drops kind of allows me to leverage like my physicality and I can play at my own pace. So anytime I see drops, like I get, my eyes light up because it's like, sweet, like I can kind of control the situation. Obviously the opposite end of drops would be a hard show or, a hedge. And that kind of presents challenges in itself because one, you've got to be on point with your handle, can't really be too loose depending on the big who's showing. And then you also have to make sure that you can make the right pass under pressure, depending on the level of on-ball defender and the big involved in the defensive coverage. So anytime I see drops, I'm like, sweet, let's go. Like this will be an easy day. So we're here. I'm on a body on position on the defensive end. So Dwight Ramos, who I'm guarding, he plays here in Japan. And he's a really good Filipino guard, like really physical, can get to the basket. Not a great shooter, but not a bad shooter either. So it's not like a situation where I could try and steal the under. So I'm in a body on trying to chase, all right? And you see just at this last point, and this is one of the hardest things I have, one of the challenges in player development is getting players to be able to chase stagger screens and not get hit. So you see the big trying to shift this pick last minute here and just dropping that shoulder and getting skinny to stay in the play. That's something that I worked on during the summer, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of reps. And the best way to do it is like just going out and chasing people off staggers. So really happy that I was able to execute that here. Anyway, as we let the clip go, I get reattached, get a hand on the ball, no advantage. Just a solid defensive play.
I'm working with professional basketball players all over the world to develop an unwavering confidence, focus, and resilience with their game. We use basketball video sessions to have real conversations, tying together sports psychology, mental performance, and basketball mindfulness with the technical and tactical aspects of their game. We help players earn more money, get more playing time, develop their relationships, but all the while developing this inner peace, no matter how chaotic their situation is. So if you're a pro and you want to learn more, email me using support@playfreebball.com to get connected.
In transition here, just getting downhill really, like one-on-one. Sorry, man. Run that back. Here we go. Like, yeah. O-trans, one-on-one, like, I'm always going to back myself in this situation, and like slowing down to see like, okay, what are my options here? All right, go with a high pickup, swing it through, keep it in my right hand, reverse leg. Yeah, just simple basketball, and yeah, not really much else I could add to that.
I got
Let's
a
go next.
question. I got a question for you, and it may be slightly unrelated based on the situation.
Yep.
But generally, like what do you try to do as a guard or a point guard in outlet situations? Like that was a situation where you were a little bit ahead, and then you just to catch a deep outlet. But are there any specific things that you try to do to maximize uh, your team's ability to attack and transition?
100%. Like with that clip in particular, like we kind of already had everything under control in terms of from the rebounding point of view. So we're here, like I already know like there's bodies behind me, so the best thing I could do is like, yep, just catch this thing on the run. So now let's just say I didn't have all that space, and let's just say my defender was right on my sort of like on my doorstep, so like guarding, like pushing me towards the baseline, and he was at the 3-point line. Like I'm thinking, can I catch this on the run? And can I catch this? So if my defender was on my back, I would almost be like making like a curl cut. So like kind of tracing the circle inside the key.
Mm-hmm.
So the catch would be extended from the defender, but I'm also still kind of going towards making my way downhill. So that's things I always think about when catching outlets. But here I already knew my defender was way off my body, and I could just start going downhill.
Mm.
So here we go. Yeah, and this is what I talked about, right? Like, kind of like, here we go. See, you can see me waving Ethan, who's the wing right there, guarded by number 0. I'm waving him through, like, hey man, like get to your space. Let's run this pick and roll, and then downhill.
That scissor skip is pretty interesting. I've seen that in a few different uh, possessions. How you kind of get up in the air and load up. Would you say that's one of your main go-tos in setup, in any kind of setup trying to attack downhill?
Yeah, man, I'm giving away all my little tricks here, but yeah, for sure. Because I feel like being able to lift your feet just gives you that power and acceleration, and also not only does it give you that, but it gives you time to read like your primary defender. Like here, like I can see he's not really like engaged into my body, and he's kind of just going under. So I'm like, yeah, sweet. I'm just gonna get downhill and accelerate. And then, if you can do that, it's like you'll take layups, every possession if you could.
Mm-hmm. What would be, and I don't know if we have a clip to show it, but let's say a defender was more engaged, right? Like they were into your body, they've got their forearm right into you. What's your how would it change? Like I know you said you got to be tighter with your handle, and maybe again it depends on personnel. So let's say, for example, this person, you've got a size and physicality match advantage, really decided to get into you, right?
Yep.
How would the setup change?
So in this case, let's just say he was on my hip right now.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought would be reject. So trying to create separation before the screen happens. So let's just say 16's on my hip. Rob's coming to set the screen, maybe on the same angle. Maybe we could slightly change it. But I would try to reject towards the referee on the sideline. And if he doesn't honor that and allows me to get downhill, then I take it. But if he doesn't allow me to reject the screen, this is cool. And hopefully by the time that I slam on the brakes and realize that he's contained me on the reject, now hopefully when I go back into the ball screen, I have separation between me and him, and the big hopefully is arriving on time. So kind of like once the ball gets to my right hand and I load my feet up again, I should have separation and the fake should be able to come clean them up. If the defender was engaged and, really on my hip and forcing me to, invest in a really good pick and roll setup. And I would say that anytime you have great defenders, you have to set them up. You can't just not do anything and then try and run off the screen, because at, higher levels, defenders are just way too good to get into your hip and kind of bump you off your line, and then you don't really have an advantage on a pick and roll, and then you have to invest in another one or go second side. So that would be my approach to the pick and roll situation if he played it differently.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll take a layup. So here, kind of on ball action, no, go under. So guard to guard actions are very common in basketball. Let's see how we play this here. So we're switching this, right? And that's that shoulder dip, right? Real big advocate on that. It's being able to drop that shoulder last minute. So we switch it. We probably didn't call it very early, but we get there anyway. And just being able to drop that shoulder to stay in the play. All right, now we're back to neutral. And they take a very tough shot. So simple but effective. And for players out there who, want to play at higher levels, yes, being able to run pick and rolls and master that is a great asset, but I'd say being able to guard people and not allow people to, get easy scores or run their actions, that's going to get you way more minutes and a lot easier to master than being, a pick and roll target player.
Mm.
And that's kind of where my journey started as well. We spoke about it, I think, before we had this conversation. I was never a pick and roll guy. That's something that I worked over my career getting towards. So my first thing was 3 and D, catch and shoot and guard people and don't allow people to get buckets. And then, over the years and expanding my game and working on my game, started to get a little bit more of a license to okay, maybe we'll run a pick and roll position for you on the second side, and then developing that and then just keep building. So don't get discouraged in your journey as a basketball player. If you put in the time and keep improving, you could eventually become a really good two-way player. So here, run a little zipper action out of bounds, chasing, get to the body. We like to say body on, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Get to the body, try and be physical, usher him into the screen, no advantage, get clipped here. Big's rolling down, but they don't really explore it. It's kind of like a neutral play.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like
defense, when did you first really start guarding like you are now, right? In terms of eliminating separation and being physical and bodying up, was that something you've again playing, at the high school, grassroots, young, or was it something that you learned as a pro, or with the national team? When did the mentality shift for you?
I would say I kind of started realizing the benefit of being a good defender when I got to college in the US. Um, I say that because physically I've always been gifted, but going from New Zealand to the US, it's another level of athlete that you're competing against based off the sheer number of athletes and the caliber of athletes that you have within the United States. So once I got to college, I was like, damn, like I'm actually not really that athletic comparatively to the rest of the competition. And I was very fortunate enough that my coach at the time at Stephen F. Austin, Danny Casper was his name. His sort of thing was like his teams were defensively really, really solid. And in order for me to find minutes on the court, it wasn't going to be like blow buying people and getting to the rim and all that. It was literally like blow this action up, guard your man, keep him in front. So that's kind of where it started. And then once I went through my college career and then moving up to being a pro, like most situations, there's already guys who have already established themselves as offensive players. So I knew coming in, like, okay, the only way that I'm going to be able to like find minutes for myself is just play really, really solid defense and knock down open shots. And there's some technique things that you can work on, and hopefully, your coaching staff can kind of help aid you in that regard. But yeah, just really focusing on getting onto the body, blowing up on ball actions, whether it's a handoff as well, you can still get body on, fight through screens. So it started in my college days, but as a pro, that was like my early responsibility and way to contribute to our team.
This may be a pretty similar question and answer.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about defensive positioning, it seems like my biggest pet peeve when I'm coaching high school, 15, 16, 17, and even in a university, guys learning positioning, specifically off the ball, like where to stand, where to be. Would it be the
Yeah.
same case? Like, is that where you learn positioning and it really it became easier to keep your head on the swivel and know where the ball's at, knowing where you need to be? Is it the same kind of thing? You just had to piece it together?
Nah, I wouldn't say nah. In this regard, if we're talking about defensive positioning, you know, kind of understanding how like there's certain actions in basketball that you'll see that are like common throughout the whole world. Zipper actions, turnout or floppy, as some people call it. And I think it's kind of like a two-part, right? Like you as a basketball player on the floor, like you have to work on your game and get better at those things. But also from a coaching staff point of view, like they have to be able to recognize and teach your athletes essentially like, okay, this is dangerous. Like they're running a stagger screen or they're running an on ball, wing on ball, and there's a stagger screen happening at the same time. All right, I have to make a decision. Like, do I need to help? So recognizing, all right, the on-ball defender's okay. He's not in a situation where he's been clipped and now it's 2v1 on that wing pick and roll. I need to start making my way from help side, so from the low eye towards the body of my defender and getting ready for this stagger screen that's happening. That would be one example. So yeah, you could definitely, take, individual responsibility and like understanding, body positioning, when to leave, but it also comes from the coaching staff, point of view as well. As like they have to be able to give you the information so when I can do this and how we're guarding it specifically.
So I'm going down the rabbit hole a bit here, but because I know that you're coaching and you're working with players, and this is something that you want to do. going forward, let's say you have a new team and you're going to teach defensive positioning, some of the things that you've done forever as a player. From all your experiences, what do you think the most effective way is to teach some of these defensive principles and concepts? Like, what would your approach be if you had, let's say, you know, 2 weeks of practices to prepare?
Okay. I got you. Yeah, I see what
Okay.
you're doing here. I see. All right. So let's break it down. Okay. So there's off-ball screening actions, and then there's on-ball screening actions. So, for instance, like the last few teams I've been on, we've always preached as the on-ball defender, body on, right? So, and I think this may have come up in other podcasts, like Basketball Immersion, do a really good job of like, um, you know, taking a hostage, like getting to the body as close as you can. Now, a way you can sort of drill this, and it's extremely difficult to get it done, but it's probably the quickest way to get better as an on-ball defender, is just a 2-on-2 pick and roll action, no help side. That's a really good way to get your defenders to get really good at stopping on-ball actions. One, because it's literally just you, your defender, and then two bigs. I mean, you and your offensive player guarding and two bigs. So if we have this screen here, if we were to wipe out everyone on the back side of the screen, and it was just number 33, Finn, who's guarding number 33, Shea Illy, who's on the ball, and the pick and roll guard, it would just be them two. And then you can add constraints like, okay, we're only ever going to play drops. So now it kind of gives the advantage to the defense, because if you were to show on this, there's no help side, 33 is going to be loose on the rim. That would be a really good way of trying to encourage your players to get good at pick and roll defense. And it's a two-way thing as well. Like the offensive player with the ball, now you have to invest in your setup because the defender's climbing in. It's like, okay, can I reject this to the 45? Okay, sweet. Now maybe I have separation, and it's going to change your pick and roll spacing as well. So it'll give you a different look. That's one way you can work on, defensive positioning and sort of recognition. The other way is like you could play 2-on-2 out of DHOs, or 3-on-3 with a primary guard up top with the ball, and then two backside wings, screening for each other, and then just working on getting body on and, sort of avoiding that last screen. That's another way you could sort of help drill your players get better at defense.
Considering all the years you've played, all the teams you've been a part of, all the different systems that you've had to learn, when you think about like the times where you've been on teams or you've just experienced it personally, developing two-way communication, right, between yourself guarding the ball and maybe having someone else guarding the screener, how can you better communicate? Like if players are listening, they're saying, man, we got to be better with our communication, or I have to be better with my communication with the big in this kind of situation. What to you really stands out if you had a few tips to say, hey, like this is some things that you can start doing to improve your effectiveness?
Communicating early, loud, and often. That's a good start. So early recognition, like, sometimes certain situations are going to put the onus on you as maybe the help side defender, like you can see what's happening. So if you can recognize that there's danger in an action, it's like communicating that. Back screening actions, like, that's like a simple one, like someone throws it to the wing, that guard is throwing it to the wing, is receiving a back screen, and you're guarding the back screen. You should probably say back screen, but very early, not at the last minute. So now the defender can sort of body on and maybe, fight over, or maybe if he gets clipped, you can switch it, things like that. So
If
recognize it
regarding
early, loud, and often.
sorry to interrupt. I think one thing I want to get clear on, because this is something I see as a challenge for players. What's the sequence of phrases or words that the big can be saying to the guard, right? Like, is it screen, like for pick and roll, is it screen left and then you're yelling the coverage, you know, three times? Like, what do you think is an effective sequence of phrases in this situation?
I think it's, yeah, if like, so for us in the national team, we say strong or weak. So strong would be going to your right, and weak would be going to your left. So basically left or right. So that's usually what our bigs would be communicating.
So they'd say the first word they would say is strong or weak, just strong,
Yeah,
and then they
yeah.
would. And is that
So
all? Yeah.
yeah, no. So that would alert the onboard offender, like, okay, I can kind of shift my feet now to one side, not too much because you don't want to just give up an open layup or easy rip or reject. And then the big would call the coverage. So it's like strong blue. So strong blue would be force them to your right, and we're in a drops coverage. Or strong red. So, same thing, force them to your right, and then we're in a hard, aggressive show. And those sort of cue words can change, depending on what you want it to be. I mean, you could literally say, make the coverages any name you want. It's just communicating that early, loud, and often.
Hmm.
I feel like that's the part that makes it really work.
Right. And just last question with this, with when you say strong or weak, you said to your right. So it's not based on hands, right? Like if we don't say it's not his right hand or his left hand. It's more so for me,
Yes.
strong. I know, okay, I got to send him this way, right?
Yeah.
Weak means left.
Yeah. And I've been on teams where that meant the opposite, where,
Yeah.
so in this case, it was strong was like going to the on-ball defender's right, or weak would be going to the on-ball defender's left. But, sometimes coaches have different approaches and theories, and strong means like, oh, okay, we're going to send this player to his strong hand. And that's a whole nother level of being able to think on the fly, because not every player is going to be a right-handed player, not every player is going to be left-handed. So
Right.
there's another level of information you have to process as you're going through the coverage. So it might not be ideal for youth players, but maybe once you've got to a pretty high level, and coaches are going to ask a lot more from you.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yes, sir. That's awesome.
All right, so they're running sort of an Iverson action, another pin down, dip the shoulder. All right, and at this point, like, I've done a good job avoiding the screen, but I'm not really in front, and he's still got space in between me and the white who's catching the ball. So the big here, Sam, he kind of recognizes that, and we just kind of peel switch this. I'm a little bit late, but I start fighting early before the shot even gets up. So, like, in an ideal situation, I would recognize super early, like now, and start peeling towards the big, and Sam would step up a little bit earlier. But I'm still thinking, can I get there? Nah, I'm cooked. And so now I'm starting the fight before the shot even gets up, trying to usher this big underneath the rim so he doesn't get position. Sam coming up on rebounding duty, and cleaning the boards. And in basketball, sometimes you're not going to always be able to blow up actions, and things like this where you have to adjust them on the fly. It's like, that's early recognition and trying to execute it even when you're in a disadvantaged situation.
Yeah, this clip was one of my favorite clips, just because of your assertiveness on the peel switch. Like maybe the timing could have been better, like you said, you could have done it earlier, but just immediately getting into his body, you had the high hand to deflect, and then you pushed him right underneath. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Sometimes it's like, yeah, in those situations, the sort of the alarm bells go off, and you're like, if I don't get this box out, we're in trouble. So, luckily I was switched on in that play. So another action here. All right, like I know that they're good. Like I can kind of see what's happening, so I don't really need to be in a low position. And I think the way that we were guarding this action is like the low man responsibility is all on the big who's at the free throw line, partly because I think the big who he's guarding is not really a threat from the perimeter, so we can offer maximum help. So I could be a lot more attached to Dwight, if that makes sense. But as we run the action, I'm getting ready to chase, body on, little bit of separation, dip the shoulder, but I get right back in front, and just a little thing, like that ball's exposed. Anytime that ball's exposed, my thinking is, can I get a hand on the ball? Just to make him think about something. Obviously some coaches are going to have a different approach, but I think, I back myself, and I feel like I've established myself as a good defender, so I'm going to see if I can try and get a hand on the ball, and then at least he's got to think about it. So here, waiting for an on-ball screen, doesn't happen. They run another action. Contested 2, we'll be happy with that. Okay, so next play, out of bounds. This positioning here, I'm just taking a rest. I must be very tired. So it's catching a breather.
Is this strategic though? Like that almost seems like I know a lot of players use that as a setup. Because like
absolutely,
I seem like I'm chilling, but really I'm just gonna, sprint off the screen.
Exactly, man. And you would know this, like being a great actor in basketball, and I don't mean flopping. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying being a great actor in regards to, like, you kind of just going from the wing, cutting through, and then you just turn on the gas. Like you kind of like, yep, I'm just chilling, and then boom, you just turn on the gas. Sometimes it can catch defenders, off guard. So I think in this case, it might have been something I was doing intentionally, for sure. Anyway, they switched the guard to guard sort of screening away action. Sam does a great job shifting the pick late. All right, so I get a catch here, and now we're going to go into wing pick and roll. Defender gets clipped again, and right now I know it's 2v1 now. Like my defender is pretty much out of the play, so I'm saying, can I get a pocket pass here? Can I explore a little bit deeper, and then maybe the window is late over the top to Sam for a lob? I decide to go for a midi. I think in this game, I might have just been feeling good, so I thought, I'll take this mid-range jumper. Goes in. Not really too much else to say about that. Anyway, next play, we're going to transition. Usually in transition, we'll always run like a drag screen, whether it's a single drag or a double drag. In this case, we elect to go just a single drag, trying to maximize our spacing. Let's run that back just slightly. So right now I'm seeing my defender. Can I reject? He's already off the body, so I feel like I don't really need to. Whereas if he was on the body, then maybe I need to invest in a setup, but I don't need to. Now, right here, Sam's getting out early on the screen. The big who's guarding Sam is in a drop. And then we've got kickouts because of the shrink help. Now, ideally, if I could get it there now, out of my left hand, that would be the best way to kill this shrink help defender number 15. But for whatever reason, I probably felt I could get downhill and take another bounce. But anyway, I'm still able to get it there. Taylor drives, kick, and then right here it's just dominoes, really. We've got an advantage. Keep the ball moving, ball don't stop, catch and shoot.
Mm. I
I think I
noticed
remember.
the one thing that seems to keep coming up. You like to push crossover, like whatever you want to call it, but you push it across your body, and how you change direction. Like that seems like a go-to for you.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. Like that's again another part of your package. Like you mentioned, we talked about the scissor skip, and then you've got the push cross. And I guess you feel like you're able to really get from point A to point B that much faster with that
Yeah.
than maybe other moves.
Yeah, so this is actually a great question because you know part of my journey becoming a pick and roll player was trying to be a better ball handler, and I maybe there's other athletes out there who struggle with this. Is like, what do you need to work on? Like, there's just so many dribble moves that you could be putting together, and as I got older, I realized like you don't really need a lot. Like there's crossover between the legs, and then maybe some counters to that. So for me, was like really sitting down and honing in on like, okay, what's going to really help me? And for me, like, I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but like sometimes crossing over like the traditional way where you like kind of extend and then just cross, I feel like that's really putting yourself at risk in some situations, depending on who's guarding you, like putting the ball out in front. So for me, it was like getting really good at like being able to cuff the ball. So doing a lot of variations of cuff series. I'm sure there's a lot of videos online, and coaches probably have drills where you can work on that. So basically, having the ball float and being able to manipulate that into your pocket. And then from there, I was like, okay, I'm going to work on push crosses like every day. That was my setup: push cross, push cross. And then the counter to that would be just an in and out. And basically, those are the only real two dribble moves that I do. Is like push cross, in and out. And then obviously there's some variation to that. Like I might go to a speed stop and then I get into a drop stance. But I feel like it really helped my individual development, being able to hone in on like 4 or 5 different dribble moves and using that for setups and getting downhill, because it just gives you a clearer idea of like, okay, I've got the advantage, I'm reading the coverage or I'm reading my defender, I'm just going to get to this move, and if they cut me off, then get to the counter. As opposed to like sometimes it can be hard with your player development, like trying to think of every possible thing that could come up or every possible dribble combination. I just feel like sometimes if you can hone in on that, it's just going to give you that confidence going into real time in game, being able to make a decision.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you eliminated a lot of extra stuff and you just gave yourself a few options. And I'm
Yeah,
sure
and
at this
I
point you've really started to build on those things too. Like it's okay, these are the few things, and now as I've really gotten comfortable with it, I may add a little bit of complexity to it,
mm,
just to be playing to what we've talked about of being deceptive and practicing deception. I think is a cool thing. Yeah.
100%, man. It's the beauty of the game. Like there's so much subtlety in the game of basketball, and then in regards to this situation, it's like the defender doesn't know when you're going to actually go. They don't know when you're actually going to shoot. So it's like you don't need to like overcomplicate situations. Just be really good with your fundamental skill, and then obviously being deceptive. You don't need to be the fastest guy in the world to be able to create an advantage.
Mm.
So so they're running a middle pick and roll here. Um, they're playing in drops. I'm sort of so I'm on the backside of the ball screen, and I'm trying to time this as well. Like I know the biggest court in coverage. like he's like having to guard two. So you can see I'm already in a stance where like I'm going to get ready to get into a fill behind against the drop coverage. So as this thing develops, like you can see the low eye Dwight Ramos is already helping because the big's already caught in coverage. So he's taking this roller. So now if you look at the backside, Natai, number 20, and myself are essentially playing 2v1 with number 10. So my thinking here is like, can I extend this 2v1 and make it harder on 10 to close out? So if we stay compressed where we are, he can still kind of play both of us. But if I get to this fill behind, now it opens, like you can see now, like the distance that he has to cover between myself and Jordan Natai, number 20 in the corner, is massive. And I think I might have missed the extra pass to Jordan. My apologies. But anyway, I sort of sell a fake, hit on the brakes, step back. I've got enough space to get my shot off. And luckily for me, it goes in. You're not always going to make the right decision, but sometimes committing to your decision and, executing it can sometimes make up for some things. But I really like that position because that's something that we work on against drops coverage, especially out of middle pick and roll with the spacing we had and actually executing the timing with the pick and roll and the fill behind. It's just like enjoyable basketball. I really enjoy playing good team basketball. Next play. So cut off the baseline. So now he's got to go back and maybe use the screen. No, he wants to post me up. Low percentage shot. It's just like pretty simple, but if we run it back, it's like staying in that chase. Like here, body on, take the bump. It's being physical, using verticality. Maybe it's a foul, but ref doesn't call it. It's like just little plays like that will get you, more minutes and get your coaches to trust you and, just keep building that individual confidence, as the game's going.
From a technical aspect, we're putting on, or you're putting on a defensive clinic, by the way. I just want to keep probing.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, just giving so much value to people that are listening. Is there anything like when we think about just keeping people in front, like guarding your yard, and you can roll that clip back, but you said it earlier, like sometimes if you can improve your technique, you can get better defensively. You can be quicker on the ball. So is there anything that you've done that's helped you be quicker on the ball and keeping people in front?
Absolutely. When you're trying to become a better basketball player, I think on-court stuff is something that maybe some people prioritize more, but it's all the little things you're going to do in terms of when you're in the weight room, like, your strength work, agility work. So for me, because I think this is, so the season leading up to this game prior, I spent a lot of time in the off season doing a lot of like low level plyos, single leg, like sort of pogos, lateral pogos, sort of like ice skaters, if you will, jumping from side to side, which I never really spent much time doing. And obviously there's a level of like, you need someone knowledgeable to help you, but I mean, I'm sure there's enough people in the circle that can help you or point you to the right direction. So I think for me, being a better defender really came from really investing in the weight room. Whether that's investing in your warm-ups, getting all the low-hanging fruit, make sure that your glutes are strong, you can use bands, do a little bit of clam activation, hip activation, all those things add up. Because if you think of a course of even just a regular season when you're playing, let's just say you play 30 games, and if your team is structured this way, when you guys do your pre-game warm-up, you're going to maybe do it in groups. This is a professional environment we're speaking about. And so, you have your guards come out, and you take all the shots that you would take, but before you even get on the floor, it's like you do your activation. And so there's maybe 5 or 10 minutes every game that you can invest in becoming a better athlete. And there's no reason why you can't take that same approach in the off season. When I come in for my, gym work, like I'm going to get my activation right, make sure that I'm getting stronger, faster. And it doesn't need to be something that's like, something new under the sun. It's just like really investing the time to have that approach, take that approach of every time I'm coming into the gym, I'm getting 1% better, 2% better, just by doing this little activation and taking it seriously. So for me, that really helped my foot speed, my power through my glutes and my hips. And ultimately, after all of that, you still have to go out and do the actual act of guarding people. It's no use doing all that work and then you never actually have to guard anyone. So it's actually going out there and putting those two things together. But here, yeah, it's like staying in the chase, getting in a stance, like here, pushing off that right leg, keeping them in front, extending, a little bit of core work maybe, taking a bump, taking another bump him up the line so he's not at the rim and he's fading away, and then just trying to get as tall as you can, and make that shot or contest as best as you can without fouling. And it's like if people are shooting that shot and making it, I mean, you just have to live with the percentages. I feel like that's a pretty difficult shot to make. And ultimately he doesn't make it, and it's like we don't lose anything. So run another action here, just a pin down, getting through that, back to the body on, climb in. And like I said before, every time I'm going to take a swipe, I don't want to encourage people, reaching in, because some coaches may not like that, but I'm always going to try and see if I can get my hand on the basketball. Climbing in. They don't really run a pick and roll action. They go second side. Neutral play, they don't really gain anything out of that.
When you swipe at the ball like that, it kind of sets the tone a little bit with people. Just knowing, hey, like, all right, man, I'm coming at you. You're not gonna get, a free run to the rim off the bounce. I'm here.
Absolutely.
But it's not even just a physical thing. It seems like it can also be a mental thing.
Yeah, it's like a cat and mouse game. Like, when you're playing basketball, it's almost like a game within a game. Like there's your main focus, which is the team outcome of trying to win the game. But when you have your different matchups and, throughout the course of the game, sometimes you get cross-matched, like you want to try and win that matchup, because ultimately that little win there will help aid your team in getting to a win. So, if there's any chances where I can take a swipe at the ball, or at least make this guy feel a little bit uncomfortable, maybe he's not as aggressive as he would be if I was just off the body and kind of just letting him feel free and loose. So, I always try to win those little matchups and give my defender something to think about. So we're going kind of like a zoom action, or DHO, if you will, guard to guard. Right here, I'm just making a play because I can kind of see that Shea Illy, who's at the top near half court, like he's kind of denied, so I just throw it right to the big who's flashing. They go into sort of a touch action. Tom does a great job of rolling out, not really having to hit and hold, because he already sees we have an advantage, 2v1 versus the big and the drop. And this is kind of the same concept, I think. I think I'm kind of on a little fill behind here. I don't get all the way to the top of the key, but if you could think about whose responsibility would be to get me. My initial man is guarding Tom, who's kind of like at the free throw line. So I think it's Dwight Ramos in the corner guarding someone who I can't see. Like, that's a long way to come for a rotation. So it's kind of that same concept, like 2v1, extend the help. Shea throws it to me, just an easy catch and shoot, just by, being engaged and, extending the defensive rotation. So we get into this next action. Reject. Oh, we back at the start? Yeah.
Yeah. We were going to go
There
through
we go.
round 2.
Nah, listen.
Great job, brother.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Great job.
Thank you, man.
That was well done. Like, in terms of all the language that you dropped, all the lingo, it's giving people an opportunity to start piecing it together, and not only just like offense. I think offense gets a lot of attention, but like you said, really learning how to guard can be the separator, either from not playing at all to getting on the floor, or to getting on the floor and then staying on the floor. So I think that's it's a really cool thing, man. This is really, I enjoyed this. This is nice to sit down and hear your perspective on your clips.
I'm working with professional basketball players all over the world to develop an unwavering confidence, focus, and resilience with their game. We use basketball video sessions to have real conversations, tying together sports psychology, mental performance, and basketball mindfulness with the technical and tactical aspects of their game. We help players earn more money, get more playing time, develop their relationships, but all the while developing this inner peace, no matter how chaotic their situation is. So if you're a pro and you want to learn more, email me using support@playfreebball.com to get connected.
It's kind of a cool thing because we've been, following each other on social media. Like I know like Ross McMains pretty well. I've met with Ross like, probably 10 times. Obviously pre-pandemic, we were meeting at summer league and just hanging out a lot. So we have a mutual connection there for sure. And I'm sure we've got a lot of other people.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up because obviously I've known Ross since I was in high school. We played against each other growing up. And then it was weird because it was like we played each other in high school, and then obviously he went to do his thing, like in coaching and kind of like bouncing around. And then I went to go hoop in the college scene in the States, and we hadn't seen each other for like 4 or 5 years. And then we reconnected when I got my first call up to the national team, and that was his first tour. So like our first Tall Blacks experience was like our first together. So it was kind of cool. Like, hey, bro, like, but it was weird because he was coaching and then I was still a player, but like we're the same age, which was like kind of weird, but it was cool.
What do you make of that? Like, in terms of having a relationship where you're so tight with somebody, or at least maybe you grew up with someone and you know them from a different perspective, and then you transition to the coach to player relationship. Like, what was that dynamic like?
I think it was that experience for me in particular wasn't like hard or anything. I think from a working relationship, it can only make it better because there's already like an understanding of like their approach, their personality, you understand their background. So I feel like having that relationship enhances like the ability for everyone to be at their best.
What do you think when you start, like, because you've probably moved around with a few different teams, is there anything that you do to kind of initiate the relationship, like get it started, where you kind of set the tone for maybe how you'd like it to go, or is it more of just a natural thing for you?
That's a really good question. As I've gotten older, I've been more proactive in like trying to make a connection. And so, for example, like my last season, in Melbourne. I knew some of the coaching staff, but like obviously some of the other coaching staff I didn't know. Like I hit them up on social media. I was like, hey, looking forward to working with you. These are some things that I'm really into. Like, is there any way you can help me in this regard, like with your expertise, i.e., like a strength and conditioning coach? Like, what's your sort of beliefs in this sort of training, and just kind of getting a gauge on like how they operate and what they sort of believe in their field is like the best way to go about it. Because I'm under the impression that I don't know everything, and I'm always willing to try and see things from a different perspective. So, yeah, getting to know people, I feel like, is super important. When I was younger in my career, I kind of just was like going with the flow and just letting things happen organically. And that's not to say that's not a good way of approaching it. I just feel like as I've gotten older, I've tried to be more direct and like really zone in on, building relationships with people.
And it's interesting that you say just this maturity that you're talking about, because I work with players of all ages, like high school, like high performance high school type athletes, but all the way to the pros. And I think that one of the biggest pain points for athletes, like younger athletes specifically, is the relationship with their coach, especially when you're joining something new and you're establishing yourself and you're determining what kind of player you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, that what role you're going to have. And I think it's cool that you mentioned that you're a little bit more intentional now than you were.
Yeah, it's something maybe we as coaches and I guess vets, like that's something that needs to be sort of passed on to like the younger guys coming through. Whatever level, high school, junior high school, is like understand that this game, yes, we do it because we love it, but one of the beauties of it is like you end up building long-lasting relationships if it turns out that way. So why not invest in trying to make that happen? As opposed to like, oh, I'm just going to be standoffish and not really like be fully invested because, like, for instance, this coach is going to be investing their time with me. I'm investing my time with them. Why not make that the best it can be, as opposed to like, oh, we're just clocking in now. It's 5 o'clock. Let's get these 2 hours in, and then yeah, see you later. Like, I just don't feel like it doesn't feel like we're moving together. We're kind of like just here for the moment, and then that's it.
I think you've already dropped a lot of like good knowledge, a few tips with how you'd initiate. But if there were some hoopers that are listening, younger hoopers that want to have a better relationship with their coach, how would you boil it down? Like, or what would you boil it down to? If you had to give, just do these three things outside of just what you said with initiating.
Three things. I think first off, you need to be open-minded. It's important to be open-minded because you're gonna, as you go through your basketball career, your ideas about certain things will change, and other people will have information that you don't have, and then that might be information that could be useful to you. So don't feel like, how do I word this? You're a lot smarter in a group than you are on your own. So just be open-minded to new experiences. That's one thing I would say. Two, just be, what's the word? Be persistent. Like when you meet people, there's always going to be like a feeling out process and sort of a transition, getting comfortable with people. So understanding that it's not going to just be, all smooth sailing at the beginning, but be persistent, stay with it, I think that's really important with building relationships with people. And the third one, I don't even know if there's a third one. 3 things to help build relationships with new coaches. I think I only got 2 for you, bro. I don't know if I can get
I was
that
just
third
I
one.
was waiting for it because I was like, I just threw a number out there and I wanted to see what would happen. So that's cool though. That I think those are 2 like solid tips.
Mm,
Backtracking just a bit, you've talked about having this open perspective, you know, like having this beginner's mind. And the one thing that I've found that's been cool, like we've never spoken before, but
mm,
we have like, you know, messaged back and forth a little bit. And I've always appreciated like your kind words towards what the messaging that Play Free is trying to put out into the world. And I'm just interested why this kind of stuff interests you, like why you feel like it's important to be mindful, or why it's important to maybe have some of these conversations.
yeah, and you've hit it on the nail there. Like, really, really supportive of what you do and your work. Obviously, was introduced to you via one of my coaches, Zico, um, who's doing really good stuff in New Zealand, and so that's how I kind of got introduced to you. But when I sort of saw your new stuff that you were doing in terms of like mental approach, like for me personally, once I started investing in my sort of building my mind and being open-minded and present, I feel like my game went to a whole new level that I didn't even know I could reach. Um, and part of that was like maturity and growing. Part of that's like my own traumas and mental health issues that I've had in the past that I wasn't aware of, that I was starting to get on top of. And then
Mhm.
once I developed a routine and understanding, okay, this is the best way for me to operate. This is going to have me present more often. It was just like, okay, this makes sense now. Like, this was the missing piece for me because physically, I've always been gifted. I've always had a really good work ethic, like, you know, gym rat, always in the gym. And I was always wondering, like, oh, why am I not where I think I should be? Why am I missing out on these opportunities? And it was like, oh, you need to lock in and tap into your mental approach because that's just as important as the physical part.
Where do you start with that stuff? Like being a professional
Okay.
basketball player, and obviously it can be very personal for people and it's very unique, but I'm
Mm.
just interested, you know, your perspective on it. um it was were there you mentioned a few things, but how do you get the ball rolling, or how do you do it even now as you've matured as a pro?
I mean, every individual is going to be different on what they need. So I think it's more of a trial and error thing. Like you have to, like, it's kind of goes back to the open mind thing, right? Like you're not going to know the answer straight away, but you just have to be open to trying new things. So for me, it was like, all right, I have some issues that, you know, I need to see a therapist and get on top of that. Um, and that was kind of the starting point for me. Is like my wife and I recognizing, like, okay, like I want to be a great basketball player. I want to try and reach the highest heights that I can based off my own ability. Um, you know, there's some things that I'm doing in life that aren't really helping that, i.e., you know, like you're training and then you're going out at night and then you're drinking and doing that kind of stuff. Like that's not going to really be helpful to you being a basketball player. And when you're doing that more than you should be training, then that becomes an issue. And then it's like, okay, identifying that, get that sorted, tick that one off. And then it's like digging deeper once you start having the relationship with the therapist and, um, you know, trying new things. Like I'm a real big float tank guy, so I do a lot of floating. Um, I've tried meditating and I still do it here and there, but I find that being in the float tank for me is just like, that's my meditation. Like just floating in there, no sound, completely dark. It's like it's a thing that I do. So if I'm hooping during the season, I float maybe once or twice a week, maybe 3 if I can get it in, depending on my schedule. And I feel like that for me really helped me able to like focus, and almost like it's like a reset, especially because during the season, or during the course of your basketball year, like it's like games, training. If you're a high school student, you've got classes. There's so much. You're so high strung, especially in a professional basketball environment. You need those pockets of spaces where you can really like just relax, refocus your mind on like, okay, what is important today, or like what is important for this season. Like, so often, after floats, I come out, you know, don't touch my phone for like the next hour, just relax, have a little bit of water, and then, I'll go through, my sort of like, all right, these are my goals for this season. Am I meeting these things? So it's kind of like a reflection as well as like a reset mentally as well. I feel like I'm waffling on a little bit, but that's just some of the stuff that I've kind of tapped into personally to get the ball rolling. And like I said, it's going to be different for everyone. I've talked to guys who are really big yoga guys, and, they do their yoga, once or twice a week. And that's sort of an opportunity for them to kind of hit 2 things with 1 stone, right? Like you're getting your active recovery, but you're also challenging your mind in a different way, and being able to focus. So I'd say just be open.
I love that, man. It's a cool thing because I think people think about meditation and it always needs to be, I'm sitting on a cushion and I'm, anchoring myself in my breath,
Mm.
that isn't it. From my perspective, it's like you mentioned, there's many different ways for you to find stillness. Like I just sometimes have a hot shower and that does it for me,
Yeah, man.
That's
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I've noticed in Japan that I wouldn't have gotten to experience otherwise was like, I'm not sure if you're aware of the onsen culture here.
no.
So it's like hot thermal baths, that are like, it's pretty much everyday life here. So they're like these onsen bath places. So it's like a place where you go, you pay money, you kind of shower before the bath, and then it's like a big open hot tub, and you just sit in there. And that's like the thing that people do here. And I've never done that before. And I've done it a few times, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Like this is about relaxation. Like this is really cool because it's like the norm here. Like it's very common for people to every day just go to the onsen, shower, relax. They've come off their 9 to 5 job, and this is the opportunity to kind of just zone out and just be in their own space. And I think that's really cool. Like I think, there's probably some, if you did the numbers, like there could be some advantages of being able to do something like that.
Totally. And the second point I want to make that I think you've touched on, that some people, I think some people can really tune into and appreciate. Sometimes it's about the lowest hanging fruit, and it doesn't, like meditation, spirituality, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't need to be this massive thing. It's just small things that you do, like you mentioned, like finding these pockets of time within your day, where you can practice and you can be disciplined, and that kind of gives you this momentum, to do what you need to do, to be present in the moment, to have that inner peace within yourself. I think
Yeah.
that's a
Sorry, you go.
no, I was finished, but I think that's another thing that you've really highlighted as a pro, that you're taking advantage of, and that plays into your maturity of knowing, what works for you and what's helpful.
Yeah. Building a routine is really important as well. Obviously you have to be flexible within that routine because life happens and you have to be able to adapt and adjust. But building a routine also kind of creates that momentum as well. Once you sort of find those things that work, is like being consistent with it as well, I think.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to shift a little bit from a player development standpoint. When you look at your year, season to season, how do you, like you mentioned, just having these opportunities to reflect, but what does the planning process look for you? Like now, you've got some games. How does it work in Japan right now? Are you still?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I'm kind of, if this is a transition for me, I'm actually coaching. So I'm actually an assistant coach for one of the pro teams out here in the B League, which is like, there's 3 divisions, B1, B2, B3. We're currently in the B1. So yeah, like, what was the question again? So how do we?
Yeah, so pinpointing like what your process looks like season to season, because I was just trying to figure out as I was asking the question, like, so you're coaching right now, but your actual playing season's done now, right? So now you're kind of in the off season.
Yeah, so I'm in the off season. Uh, it's kind of, I'm in the off season. I'm coaching now, but as far as like when I'm playing season to season and trying to plan, um, pinpointing things that I need to work on, I think it's sitting down with maybe someone who you have a relationship, maybe a mentor, maybe an older player. For me, it's like one of my coaches that I'm really close with, which I'm fortunate to have. And we sort of sit down and we're like, okay, uh, how did you, not just from a numbers perspective, but how did you play as a complete player, like, defensively, offensively, your reads, and then just going down a list and being able to like, yep, like, can do that, like pick and roll target player, like I can make these reads. Okay, then what's the progression from there? All right, can I make multiple reads out of pick and roll where I don't use one, don't have an advantage? Okay, now I can manipulate the defense this way. And on a simpler level, like, when I was a younger player, it was like, all right, I can catch and shoot. All right, that's great. Now I can leverage my driving ability. I can do that. Okay, can I make reads now when the defense rotates, and are you able to make the kick out pass? And so it's like a slow progression, and like understanding of like where you're at. And I think that sort of process is only helped if you have someone who can sort of guide you a little bit. Doing it on your own's fine, but I think if you have someone who's a little bit more experienced or just has really good basketball knowledge, that can sort of help you map what your off-season training or what you'll want to focus on going into the next season.
So you'd say then, yeah, that process that you've established and it's taken some time to get there really impacts your confidence, your ability to show up when training
100%.
camp begins.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very much I need to be dialed in. Like I can't just roll up to, like, say if I'm working out and I don't have access to a coach, like I can't just come in there and just be like, all right, I'm just going to start working out. Like I have to have a focused, very purposeful plan. And that takes time to be able to plan. Like it takes time to work on, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do from 1 p.m. to 1:15, I'm doing my activation. And then from there, 1:15 to 1:30, I'm doing stationary ball handling. And then I'm going to move into more movement stuff. And when you can move with intent and plan with intent, I just feel like you don't waste any time doing anything you don't need to be doing. And it's a good way to approach the game because you're always investing on what's important right now.
And especially as a professional player, you realize that there's a window to this. Like you only have so much time to reach, the potential or fulfill your potential. So making the most of it by being intentional, to me, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and because I think when you were younger, or when you first start hooping, you have big dreams, and those things are great. But the reality of, at least in this regard, like professional basketball, man, it gets ugly sometimes, man. Like, there's been plenty of times where, things are going great and, you're getting minutes, and then you go to another situation and you think that, it's all going to be great, and then you're not playing. It's DMP, DMP, and you're putting in the constant work to be at your best you can, and you're doing everything right, and you still don't get the opportunity. So it's like, how do you stay the course without losing hope, or losing confidence in yourself? And if you have a routine and you're always intentional and constantly working on your craft, that's better than being the opposite and just being like, oh, well, it's someone else's fault, and then you're not ready. Your work, you kind of deviate from your plan, and then the opportunity comes, and then you're not ready. So it's like you've got nothing to lose by staying the course, but it's very hard in professional basketball because not every situation is going to be the same. And as you climb up the ranks, like, it's going to get harder and harder, and your role is going to be more defined. So when you do get those opportunities, you have to be super ready and almost like just dialed in. Like, you can't afford to have like two breakdowns in one possession, or in two possessions, and then it's like, well, the coach has to pull you out now. Like, you've had your opportunity, two breakdowns, and then that's it. And then, you're back on the bench. So staying consistent with your plan is what I would say is really important in professional basketball, because it's always going to change in terms of your playing role and opportunities that are given to you.
And like, I guess that really is what you would say to a younger version of yourself. Like that, you may have not have known that, when you first started, but you went through it, a few different times.
Yeah, bro, I thought I was going to be in the NBA, bro. Just like a lot of other people, I was like, yeah, man, like, I'm going to go to college, do my time, come out, I'm going to get drafted, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I've had to be able to sort of humble myself a little bit and kind of refocus and reset new goals. And that time that I've spent doing that and growing as a basketball player, it's like, you realize that the most important thing is, like, am I playing the best basketball I can play? Irrespective of like what level you're at, like, am I playing good quality basketball? And am I growing as a basketball player? Not just from a skill set point of view, but as a human being. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and high pressure situation. And this is kind of going back to what I was saying before about getting to know people. It's like, just understanding that everyone goes through their problems, and sometimes in the heat of the moment, that those outside or external things can affect how we perform as a unit or as an individual. So it's like being compassionate and understanding that, okay, if I can understand this person, I can be a better version for us to be able to function, and just being, like, mindful of those things. Because yeah, you just need to be, I don't know, just be the best you can on and off the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk a lot about this idea of being able to zoom out and see the bigger picture. And then as you zoom out, you can zoom back in and redirect your attention on the things, as we've talked about, the things that are helpful. So I'm curious, like, when you look at yourself and you're struggling a bit, how do you get to that point where you're like, all right, I need to see the bigger picture here? Like, what's the sequence of events that happens, and then you can catch yourself and redirect your attention? Like, what does it look like for you?
For me, so trying to draw from an example that I've had in my career, like having, so usually during the course of a season, I'll have like, when I say I wake up, I have a little journal that I have. I'll go in there and just write like 2 things that I'm grateful for every day. And I do this throughout the whole season. So when there are times where like I'm struggling a little bit, it's just like revisiting those and kind of looking back like, oh, okay, those like that's pretty good. Like my life's not that bad. Like I shot terrible last night, but I'm grateful because I have a roof over my head and I have an awesome family that supports me, regardless of how I perform as an athlete. And I think being able to have something like that helps me. But also just having a great support system. Now, not everyone's going to have that, but building your family and your family of friends or your tribe or whatever you want to call it, like they're people that you can always, go to and speak to. So I think having those 2 things that you appreciate, and also having people in your corner who you can talk to, doesn't always have to be inside your basketball circle. It can be anyone that that you really appreciate and care for, and being able to talk, not just basketball, about life and appreciate those things, because it's easy to forget that basketball is only a small part of your life. There's all these other great things that happen. So for me, that was big, especially in my last experience professionally, because I went into a situation I thought I was going to play a lot and I didn't play at all. And that was really tough, especially because I had such a phenomenal year in growth the year prior going into that. And I thought, like, here we go, this is my chance. And it didn't come. And it was disappointing going through that. But coming out of that situation, like, I did so much growing and so much more understanding of, like, man, that was not great, but there's a lot of learnings I can take from this. And if I didn't have that sort of routine of revisiting the things that I was thankful for, it would have made that whole experience a lot harder if I was just kind of like left to my own devices and just sort of moping around, which happens. It's not easy when bad things happen.
It seems like you've trained yourself to have like this growth mindset, though. Like that's something that's contributed to your longevity. Your ability to be resilient has come from your perspective, at least from where I'm standing. I don't, this is the first real conversation that we've had, but that stands out to me.
Yeah, growth mindset, having a positive perspective, and I feel like maybe I'm being too positive, but I just think we all have a choice, man. Like there's only so much you can control. You know what I mean? Like, and all you can do is prepare as best as you can, and then be in the moment, and then from there it'll flow. That's the best way I can explain it. In terms of finding growth mindset, is there a magic formula of getting there? No, I don't think so. It's kind of like a personal thing, like as you grow as a human. And I think, yeah, for me, it was like, I think early on in my career, I was too focused on, like, I want to be this, like, I want to be averaging this many points, and too focused on the performance and not focused on what comes before the performance. Like, it's like, that's so much more important to me now. I feel like being prepared before you actually compete or before you train, that's actually very important. And I think it's overlooked a lot. At least at least for me, when I was a younger player, it wasn't common that people were having conversations about mental preparation for sport. It was like you warm up, you do your layups, and then you're ready to play. Like that was it. There wasn't any sort of like mindfulness and anything like that. So it's really cool to see people like yourself really like pushing that idea and trying to kind of give people the information that may help them, get over the hurdle that they're trying to get over.
Well, last question for you, brother, because I'm just so curious. When you look at, this opportunity that you have right now to coach a team and these philosophies that you've developed, bringing in some mindfulness or valuing that aspect of the game, how does that translate to your coaching? Or are you doing anything specific to help these athletes see what you've seen and prepare them for, what other opportunities may make themselves available?
Um, I can't say I'm doing anything in particular because my situation was kind of unique. I kind of came in to the season halfway through, so that was kind of difficult, and that was due to something we couldn't really help, like obviously visa issues, and that is a process in itself. But when I work with players, I try not to spoon feed them everything. I try to guide them in a way. So I'm more of a guide than anything. Uh, Now, part of that is I can't really dive too deep with them yet because there's a language barrier, and obviously there's some translating that happens, and I feel like some of the meaning behind what you say gets lost in translation. Um, but yeah, trying to guide players in a way where you're not always just giving them the answer. You're kind of putting you're letting them find the answers themselves, and I think that's a good starting point for this situation. I think that's because when you figure things out for yourself, it feels more meaningful, and it's really like that aha moment that hits you, and then that can kind of spark um, something even further. Whereas in situations where you're always constantly just giving them the answers, like it's not really engaging for the athlete. I feel it's not really beneficial for them long term.
100%. I think so too. It's like moving them uh, in a direction where they can find the answers, and then they start to take ownership of 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 their situation, and now they're taking responsibility, and now that leads exactly what we were just talking about with the growth mindset. You give them an opportunity to be that person because you're able to be that guide, and that's pretty powerful and inspiring. That's a really good reminder for me as I, run camps and workouts. I always love hearing that because it just shows again how important it is.
Yeah, man, it's like it's so cool. Obviously, I've been able to follow you and stuff, and see the great work that you're doing, and I'm sure this won't be the last time we chop it up and cross paths. But I just hope in the future we can work together some more, and I would love to talk hoops all day. But I know you've got responsibilities in your life, so yeah, just super grateful that you reached out and made the connection. This has been truly enjoyable.